Haribol, namaste. My name is Janapati Das, and welcome again tonight to another Krishna Katha story. Please accept my respects. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, or you know someone who would like to subscribe to my channel, please share my channel with people. Like and feel free to comment on the videos that I've listed before. Today I'm going to chant a little bit different on my piano, so I'm just going to step back here and we're going to do some hearing and chanting Krishna's names. Okay. Here we go. Please join along. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prastaya Bhutale, Srimate Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Iti Namine. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prastaya Bhutale, Srimate Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Iti Namine. Haribol Nitai Gaur, Nitai Gaur Haribol, Haribol Nitai Gaur, Nitai Gaur Haribol, Haribol Nitai Gaur, Nitai Gaur Haribol. Haribol, Nitai Gaur, Nitai Gaur, Haribol. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo. Hey, it was a little bit different today. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, we are continuing on with our story. We were reading how Uddhava was delivering a message to the gopis about Krishna, and Uddhava was relaying a message from Krishna, and the gopis now are responding to Krishna's message. They began to speak as follows. We have heard that I read that last time. Another gopi inquired, does he remember that night in midst of kumadini flowers and moonlight, when Vrindavan became exceedingly beautiful? Krishna was dancing with us, and the atmosphere was surcharged with the sound of footbells. We exchanged pleasing conversation then. Does he remember that particular night? When we remember that night and we feel separation from Krishna makes us agitated, as if there were fire in our bodies. He proposed to come back to Vrindavan to extinguish the fire, just as a cloud appears in the sky to extinguish the forest fire by its downpour. Another gopi said, Krishna has killed his enemy, and he has victoriously achieved the kingdom of Kamsa. Maybe he is married with a king's daughter by this time, and living very happily among his kinsmen and friends. Therefore, why should he come to this village of Vrindavan? Another gopi said, Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, the husband of the goddess of fortune, and he is self-sufficient. He has no business either with us, the girls in the Vrindavan forest, or with the city girls in Mathura. He is the great supersoul. He has nothing to do with any of us, either here or there. Another gopi said, it is an unreasonable hope for us to expect Krishna to come back to Vrindavan. We should try instead to be happy in disappointment. Even Pingala, the great prostitute, said that disappointment is the greatest pleasure. We all know these things, but it is very difficult for us to give up the expectation of Krishna's coming back again. Who can forget a solitary conversation with Krishna, on whose breast the goddess of fortune always remains, in spite of Krishna's not desiring her? My dear Uddhava, Vrindavan is the land of rivers, forest, and cows. Here, the vibration of the flute is heard, and Krishna, along with his elder brother Sri Balaram, enjoyed the atmosphere in our company. Thus, the environment of Vrindavan is constantly reminding us of Krishna and Balaram. The impression of his footprints is on the land of Vrindavan, which is the residential place of the goddess of fortune, but such signs cannot help us to get Krishna. The gopis further expressed that Vrindavan was still full of all opulence and good fortune, and there was no scarcity or want in Vrindavan as far as material necessities were concerned, but in spite of such opulence, they could not forget Krishna and Balaram. We are constantly remembering various attractive features of beautiful Krishna, his walking, his smiling, and his joking words. We have all become lost by the dealings of Krishna, and it is impossible for us to forget him. We are always praying for him, exclaiming, Dear Lord, dear husband of the goddess of fortune, dear Lord of Vrindavan and deliverer of the distressed devotees, we are now fallen and merged into an ocean of distress. Please therefore come back to Vrindavan and deliver us from this pitiable condition. Uddhava minutely studied the transcendental, abnormal condition of the gopis in their separation from Krishna, and he thought it wise to repeat all the pastimes of Sri Krishna over and over again. Materialistic persons are always in a burning condition on account of the blazing fire of material miseries. The gopis also were burning in a transcendental blazing fire due to separation from Krishna. The blazing fire which was exasperating the gopis, however, is different from the fire of the material world. The gopis constantly want the association of Krishna, whereas the materialistic person wants the advantage of material comforts. It is stated by Vishwananta Chakravarti Thakur that Krishna saved the cowherd boys from the blazing forest fire within a second, while their eyes were closed. Similarly, Uddhava advised the gopis that they could be saved from the fire of separation by closing their eyes and meditating on the activities of Krishna from the very beginning of their association with him. From the outside, the gopis could visualize all the pastimes of Krishna by hearing the descriptions of Uddhava, and from inside they could remember those pastimes. From the instruction of Uddhava, the gopis could understand that Krishna was not separate from them. As they were constantly thinking of Krishna, Krishna was also thinking of them constantly while at Mathura. Uddhava's messages and instructions saved the gopis from immediate death, and the gopis acknowledged the benediction from Uddhava. Uddhava practically acted as the preceptor, spiritual master of the gopis, and they in return, they worshipped him as they would worship Krishna. It is recommended in authoritative scriptures that the spiritual master should be worshipped on the level of the Supreme Personality of Godhead because of his being his very confidential servitor. And it is accepted by great authorities that the spiritual master is the external manifestation of Krishna. The gopis were relieved from their transcendental burning condition by realizing that Krishna was with them. So there is a prayer that my spiritual master has instructed us to say every morning, every day, and that is, the great sage Prabhupada said to King Nimi, my dear king, a disciple has to accept the spiritual master not only as spiritual master, but also as the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By serving the spiritual master, one is able to serve all the demigods. Actually, I'm going to say that prayer again because I jumped ahead there, sorry. The great sage Prabhupada said to King Nimi, my dear king, a disciple has to accept the spiritual master not only as spiritual master, but also as a representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the Supersoul. In other words, a disciple should accept the spiritual master as God, for he is the external manifestation of Krishna. And then the next part, as I said, Krishna said to Uddhava, my dear Uddhava, the spiritual master must be accepted not only as my representative, but as my very self. He must never be considered on the same level with an ordinary human being. One should never be envious of the spiritual master as one may be envious of an ordinary man. The spiritual master should always be seen as the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And by serving the spiritual master, one is able to serve all the demigods. So just like what is stated here, Krishna and the spiritual master, the pure devotee of Krishna, is the external manifestation of Krishna on this planet. So that is why he should be worshipped like God, not as God. He's not Krishna, but he is the representation. So similarly, as my Guru Dev would say, that you have an ambassador who represents the president, and when he or she goes to the country, he's treated like the president because he is a representative of the president. So similarly, the spiritual master is a representative of Krishna, and he is given all glory and praise from the disciple, because the spiritual master can impart knowledge unto the living entity. They can teach them. It's the only way by which one can come to know about their eternal relationship with Krishna. The gopis were relieved from the transcendental burning condition by realizing that Krishna was with them. Internally, they remembered his association within their hearts, and externally, Uddhava helped them to appreciate Krishna by conclusive instructions. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is described in the scriptures as Hokshaja, which indicates that he is beyond the perception of all material senses. Although he is beyond the perception of material senses, he is present within everyone's heart. At the same time, he is present everywhere by his all-pervasive feature of Brahman. The three transcendental features of the Absolute Truth, Bhagavan, the Personality of Godhead, Paramama, the localized Supersoul, and the all-pervasive Brahman, can be realized simply by studying the condition of the gopis and their meeting with Uddhava, as described by the Srimad Bhagavatam. It is stated by Srinivasacharya that the 6 Goswamis were always merged in thoughts of the activities of the gopis. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has also recommended the gopis' method of worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as super excellent. Srila Shukadeva Goswami has also recommended that anyone who hears from the right source about dealing of the gopis with Krishna and who follows the instructions will be elevated to the topmost position of devotional service and will be able to give up the lust of material enjoyment. All the gopis were solaced by the instruction of Uddhava, and they requested him to stay in Vrindavan for a few days more. Uddhava agreed to the proposal and stayed with them not only for a few days, but for a few months. He always kept them engaged in thinking of the transcendental message of Krishna and his pastimes, and the gopis were feeling as if they were experiencing direct association with Krishna. While Uddhava remained in Vrindavan, the inhabitants enjoyed his association. As they discussed the activities of Krishna, the days passed just like moments. Vrindavan's natural atmosphere, with the presence of the river Jamuna, its nice orchards of trees decorated with various fruits, Govardhan Hill, caves, blooming flowers, all combined to inspire Uddhava to narrate Krishna's pastimes. The inhabitants enjoyed Uddhava's association in the same way as they enjoyed the association of Krishna. Uddhava was attracted by the attitude of the gopis because they were completely attached to Krishna, and Uddhava was inspired by the gopis' anxiety for Krishna. He began to offer them his respectful obeisances and compose songs in praise of their transcendental qualities as follows. Among all the living entities who have accepted the human form of life, the gopis are super excellently successful in their mission. Their thought is thoroughly absorbed in the lotus feet of Krishna. Great sages and saintly persons are also trying to be absorbed in meditation upon the lotus feet of Krishna, who is Mukunda himself, the giver of liberation. But the gopis, having lovingly accepted the Lord, are automatically accustomed to this habit. They do not depend on any yogic practice. The conclusion is that one who has attained the gopis' condition of life does not have to take birth as Lord Brahma, or be born in a Brahmana family, or be initiated as a Brahmana. Sri Uddhava confirmed the statement of Bhagavad Gita spoken by Lord Krishna. One who takes shelter of him for the right purpose, be he a Shudra or lower, will attain the highest goal of life. The gopis have set the standard of devotion for the whole world. By following in the footsteps of the gopis, by constantly thinking of Krishna, one can attain the highest perfectional stage of spiritual life. The gopis were not born of any highly cultured family. They were born of coward men, and yet they developed the highest love of Krishna. For self-realization or God-realization, there is no need to take birth in a high family. The only thing needed is ecstatic development of love of God. In achieving perfection in Krishna consciousness, no other qualification is required than to be constantly engaged in the loving service of Krishna. Krishna, especially in the agent of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, came to save the most fallen. He came to save the most fallen. That is why he's the deliverer of the most fallen. And the people that he saved were of the lowest class. You know, even devotees of Krishna, like Lord Jesus Christ, didn't come necessarily to, save those people who were, religious Pharisees or, people who felt like they were qualified to. They were people that were most unqualified, prostitutes, thieves, tax collectors, the lowest form. And Lord Chaitanya also delivered drunkards and rapists and murderers like Jagai and Madhai. And so what to say of ourselves, who are the most fallen? Krishna is the supreme nectar, the reservoir of all pleasure. The effect of taking up Krishna consciousness is like that of drinking nectar. With or without one's knowledge, it will act. The active principle of Krishna consciousness will manifest itself everywhere. It does not matter how or where one has taken its birth. This cites the importance of this Krishna Katha, the spreading of Krishna consciousness, the practice of hearing and chanting Krishna's names, even if people, hear it and don't even repeat it, or they hear it and they mock it. It will act, like it says here, Bhaktivedanta says, it will act on their consciousness. Krishna will bestow his benediction upon anyone who takes to Krishna consciousness, without any doubt. The supreme benediction attained by the gopis, in spite of their being born in the family of coward men, was never attained even by the goddess of fortune herself, and certainly not by the denizens of heaven, though their bodily forms are like lotuses. The gopis are so fortunate that during Rasa Leela, Krishna personally embraced them with his arms. Krishna kissed them face to face. Certainly it is not possible for any woman in the three worlds to achieve this except the gopis. Uddhava appreciated the exalted position of the gopis and wished to fall down and take the dust of their feet on his head. Yet he did not dare to ask the gopis to offer the dust from their feet. Perhaps they would not be agreeable. He therefore desired to have his head smeared with the dust of the gopis' feet without their knowledge. He desired to become only an insignificant clump of grass or herbs in the land of Vrindavan. The gopis were so much attracted to Krishna that when they heard the vibration of his flute, they instantly left their families, children, honor, and feminine bashfulness and ran towards the place where Krishna was standing. They did not consider whether they were passing over a road or through the jungles. Imperceptibly, the dust of their feet was bestowed on small grasses and herbs of Vrindavan. Not daring to place the dust of the gopis' feet on his own head, Uddhava aspired to have a future birth in the position of a clump of grass or herbs. He would then be able to have the dust of the gopis' feet. Uddhava appreciated the extraordinary fortune of the gopis, who relieved themselves of all kinds of material contamination by placing on their high, beautiful breasts the lotus feet of Krishna, which are not only worshipped by the goddess of fortune, but by such exalted demigods as Brahma and Lord Shiva, which are meditated on by great yogis within their hearts. Thus Uddhava desired to be able to constantly pray to be honored by the dust of the gopis' lotus feet. The gopis' chanting of the transcendental pastimes of Lord Krishna have become celebrated all over the three worlds. After living in Vrindavan for some days, Uddhava desired to go back to Krishna, and he begged permission to leave from Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda. He had a farewell meeting with the gopis, and taking permission of them also, he mounted his chariot to start for Mathura. When Uddhava was about to leave, all the inhabitants of Vrindavan, headed by Maharaj Nanda and Yashoda, came to bid him goodbye and presented him with various kinds of valuable goods secured in Vrindavan. They expressed their feelings with tears in their eyes due to the intense attachment for Krishna. All of them desired benediction from Uddhava. They desired always to remember the glorious activities of Krishna and wanted their minds to always be fixed upon his lotus feet, their words always engaged in glorifying Krishna, and their bodies always engaged in bowing down and constantly remembering him. Wow. I would read that again, actually. It's such a good thing to just read over and over for yourself. All of them had desired benediction from Uddhava. They desired always to remember the glorious activities of Krishna and wanted their minds to be always fixed upon his lotus feet, their words always engaged in glorifying Krishna, and their bodies always engaged in bowing down and constantly remembering him. This prayer of the inhabitants of Vrindavan is the super excellent type of self-realization. The method is very simple. To fix the mind always on the lotus feet of Krishna, to talk always of Krishna without passing on to any other subject matter, and to engage the body in Krishna's service constantly. Specifically, in this human form of life, one should engage his life, his resources, his words, intelligence for the service of the Lord. Such kinds of activities only can elevate a human being to the highest level of perfection. This is the verdict of all authorities. The inhabitants of Vrindavan said, "By the will of the Supreme Authority and according to the results of our own work, we may take our birth anywhere. It doesn't matter where we are born, but our only prayer is that we may simply be engaged in Krishna consciousness." A pure devotee of Lord Krishna never desires to be promoted to the heavenly planets or even to Vaikuntha or Goloka Vrindavan because he has no desire for his own personal satisfaction. A pure devotee regards both heaven and hell to be on an equal level. Without Krishna, heaven is hell, and with Krishna, hell is heaven. When Uddhava had sufficiently honored the worship of the pure devotees of Vrindavan, he returned to Mathura and to his master Krishna. So Lord Krishna Chaitanya has a prayer. He says, I only, oh boy, I'm going to forget the actual prayer, but he says, I don't mind if you crush me in your embrace or cast me away. I'm of course paraphrasing this, but he says, I will be you will be my Lord unconditionally, and I will love you unconditionally. So, remembering Krishna this way, where he says also, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, I have no desire for beautiful women, I have no desire for any followers or any number of followers, I only desire your causeless devotional service in my life, birth after birth. And this is heaven, regardless of where you are materially. When Uddhava had sufficiently honored the worship of the pure devotees of Vrindavan, he returned to Mathura and to his master Krishna. After offering respects by bowing down before Lord Krishna and Balaram, he began to describe the wonderful devotional life of the inhabitants of Vrindavan. He presented all of the gifts given by the inhabitants of Vrindavan to Vasudeva, the father of Krishna, and Ugrasena, the grandfather of Krishna. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 46th chapter of Krishna, delivering of the message of Krishna to the gopis. And we're still kind of early, so I'm going to go into my next chapter here. Krishna pleases his devotees. For days together, Krishna heard from Uddhava all the details of his visit to Vrindavan, of the condition of his father and mother, and of the gopis and the cowherd boys. Lord Krishna was fully satisfied that Uddhava was able to solace them by his instruction and by the message delivered to them. Lord Krishna decided to go to the house of Kubja, the hunchback woman who had pleased him by offering him sandalwood when he was entering the city of Mathura. So the hunchback woman and Krishna had, of course, grabbed him because the hunchback woman put all the sandalwood that was supposed to go to Kamsa on the body of Krishna and Balaram, offered it to them. So Krishna thought about ways to reward the woman and grabbed her shoulders and straightened her out and made her beautiful. And then, of course, she was like, you have to come see me. And Krishna was like, well, I got to go kill my uncle. I've got things to do right now, but I will come. And so this is the situation where she went. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna always tries to please his devotees, and the devotees try to please Krishna. As the devotees always think of Krishna within their hearts, so Krishna also thinks of his devotees within himself. When Kubja was converted into a beautiful society girl, she wanted Krishna to come to her place so that she could try to receive and worship him in her own way. Society girls generally try to satisfy their clients by offering their bodies to the men to enjoy, but this society girl, Kubja, was actually captivated by a lust to satisfy her senses with Krishna. When Krishna desired to go to the house of Kubja, he certainly had no desire for sense gratification. By supplying the sandalwood pulp to Krishna, Kubja had already satisfied his senses. On the plea of her sense gratification, he decided to go to her house not actually for sense gratification, but to turn her into a pure devotee. Krishna is always served by many thousands of goddesses of fortune. Therefore, he has no need to satisfy his senses by going to a society girl. But as he is kind to everyone, he decided to go there. It is said that the moon does not withhold its shining from the courtyard of a crooked person. Similarly, Krishna's transcendental mercy is never denied to anyone, whether one has rendered service unto him through lust, anger, fear, or pure love. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is stated that if one wants to serve Krishna and at the same time wants to satisfy his own lusty desires, Krishna will handle it so that the devotee forgets his lusty desire and becomes fully purified and constantly engaged in the service of the Lord. In order to fulfill his past promise, Krishna, along with Uddhava, went to the house of Kubja. When Krishna reached her house, he saw that it was completely decorated in a way to excite the lusty desires of a man. This suggests that there were many nude pictures, on top of which were canopies and flags embroidered with pearl necklaces, along with comfortable beds and cushioned chairs. The rooms were provided with flower garlands and were nicely scented with incense and sprinkled with scented water. and the rooms were illuminated by nice lamps. When Kupja saw that Lord Krishna had come to her house in order to fulfill his promised visit, she immediately got up from the chair to receive him. Accompanied by her many girlfriends, she began to talk with him with great respect and honor. After offering him a nice place to sit, she worshipped Lord Krishna in a manner just suitable to her position. Uddhava was similarly received by Kupja and her girlfriends, but he was not on an equal level with Krishna, and he simply sat down on the floor. Without wasting time, as one does in such situations, Krishna entered the bedroom of Kupja. In the meantime, Kupja took her bath, smeared her body with sandalwood pulp. She dressed herself with nice garments, valuable jewelry, ornaments, and flower garlands. Chewing betel nut and other intoxicating eatables and spraying herself with scent, she appeared before Krishna. Her smiling glance and moving eyes were full of feminine bashfulness as she stood gracefully before Lord Krishna, who is known as Madhava, the husband of the goddess of fortune. When Krishna saw that Kupja was hesitating to come before him, he immediately caught hold of her hand, which was decorated with bangles. With great affection, he dragged her beside him and made her sit by his side. Simply by having previously supplied pulp and sandalwood to the Supreme Lord Krishna, Kupja became free from all sinful reactions and eligible to enjoy with him. She then took Krishna's lotus feet and placed them on her breasts, which were burning with the blazing fire of lust. By smelling the fragrance of Krishna's lotus feet, she immediately became relieved of all lusty desires. She was thus allowed to embrace Krishna with her two arms and thus mitigate her long-cherished desire to have Krishna as a visitor in her house. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita that without being freed of all material sinful reactions, one cannot be engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Simply by supplying sandalwood pulp to Krishna, Kupja was thus rewarded. She was not trained to worship Krishna in any other way, therefore she wanted to satisfy him by her profession. It is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita that the Lord can be worshipped even by one's profession, if it is sincerely offered for the pleasure of the Lord. Kupja then told Krishna, "My dear friend, kindly remain with me at least for a few days. Enjoy with me, you and your lotus-eyed friend. I cannot leave you immediately. Please grant my request." As stated in the Vedic versions, the Supreme Personality of Godhead has multi-potencies. According to expert opinion, Kupja represents the Purusha Shakti potency of Krishna, just as Srimati Radharani represents his Chit Shakti potency. Although she requested Krishna to remain with her for some days, Krishna politely impressed upon her that it was not possible for him to stay. Krishna visits this material world occasionally, whereas his connection with the spiritual world is eternal. Krishna is always either in the Vaikuntha planets or in the Goloka Vrindavan planets. This technical term for his presence in the spiritual world is Prakata Leela. After satisfying Kupja with sweet words, Krishna returned to his place along with Uddhava. This is a warning in the Srimad Bhagavatam that Krishna is not very easily worshipped because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the chief among the Vishnu Tattvas. To worship Krishna or have association with him is not a very easy job. Specifically, there is a warning for devotees who are attracted to Krishna through conjugal love. It is not good for them to desire to have sense gratification by direct association with Krishna. Actually, the activities of sense gratification are material. In the spiritual world, there are no symptoms like kissing and embracing, but there is no sense gratificatory process. In the spiritual world, there are symptoms like kissing and embracing, but there is no sense gratificatory process as it exists in the material world. This warning is specifically for those who are known as Sahija, who take it for granted that Krishna is an ordinary human being. They desire to enjoy sex life with him in a perverted way. In the spiritual relationship, sense gratification is most insignificant. Anyone who desires a relationship of perverted sense gratification with Krishna must be considered to be less intelligent. His mentality requires to be reformed. And so we will continue this chapter next time. Thank you very much.
Bring out the ukulele.
All right, here we go. Aribo, Okay, that's all for today. Thank you very much. Have a lovely evening. Namaste.